There's one number that separates the people who get crushed by debt from the people who quietly get wealthy using it. And here's the strange part. It has nothing to do with how big the loan is and nothing to do with the interest rate by itself. Two people can take out the exact same loan at the exact same rate on the exact same day, and one of them ends up buried while the other ends up ahead. Same loan, same rate, opposite outcome. The difference comes down to one number. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what it is, and you'll know how to run it on your own situation. Because debt itself was never the problem. Using it without understanding this one number is the problem. My name is Nick, and today we're going through 6 real ways this shows up. Some you can use starting tonight. Some you genuinely can't yet, and I'll be honest about which is which the whole way through. Forget everything you've absorbed about debt being simply good or bad. At its core, a loan is just rented money. You borrow it, you pay a fee for the time you hold it, and you give it back. That fee is the interest rate, the rent. So the only question that actually matters, when you take that rented money and put it to work, does it generate more than the rent costs? If borrowed money earns 8% somewhere and the rent on it is 5%, you keep the difference. That gap has a name, the spread. And your actual return on your own cash equals the spread multiplied by how many borrowed dollars you're controlling for every dollar of your own you put in. Small spread, huge leverage, and the return on your own money can still be enormous. Big spread with zero leverage caps out fast. The two variables together are the whole story. And every example from here forward is just this same formula with different numbers plugged in. Let's start with the most accessible version there is. Meet a version of this story, a woman who resells refurbished furniture out of a rented garage. The textbook approach: buy a truckload of estate sale furniture with your own cash, fix it up, sell it. That's the version where your own money sits tied up in a garage full of dressers for 6 weeks. The smarter version: a lot of estate liquidators and wholesale suppliers will hand over inventory on consignment or on 30 to 60-day terms. You take the furniture now, pay for it once it sells or once the term's up. They're functioning as your bank, and the inventory itself is the loan. Run the one number on it. She sells most of the pieces before any bill is even due, pays the supplier from the proceeds, keeps the markup. Her own cash in the deal, 0. Which means her leverage isn't modest, it's effectively infinite, because you're dividing the return by $0 of her own money. The spread itself was just her per-item markup, but multiplied by infinite leverage, the return on her actual cash becomes very real. This is why sourcing and selling skill is worth more than capital in a huge number of small businesses. The money was never the bottleneck, the terms were. And this one's genuinely reachable today. Any 0% introductory business card that floats inventory, any supplier offering 30-day terms, any client deposit that funds a job before you've spent your own dollar. Same mechanism, smaller scale, available right now. Number 2 is real estate. And this is where a lot of finance content quietly gets the math wrong. Let's run it properly. A rundown property costs $450,000. Nobody wants it, which is exactly why it's cheap. 20% down is $90,000. Finance the rest with a $360,000 mortgage. Another $40,000 goes into renovation. Total cash in the deal, $130,000. Once it's fixed up and desirable, market value climbs to $650,000. A refinance at 80% of the new value pulls out $520,000, enough to pay off the original $360,000 mortgage, with $160,000 left over in cash. Here's the part that gets misreported constantly. That's not simply $160,000 minus $40,000 renovation equals $120,000 profit. What actually happened is better than that framing. $130,000 of personal cash went in. $160,000 came back out. Every dollar of the original investment got returned, plus extra. And there's still a $630,000 property owned, with roughly $130,000 of equity sitting in it, ready to rent out. Run the one number. How much personal cash is left in this deal? 0. Which means the return on actual personal money isn't a percentage, it's technically infinite, because nothing of the investor's own money remains at risk. The honest catch, because this isn't a hype channel, the new loan is bigger. Going from owing $360,000 to owing $520,000 means a meaningfully larger monthly payment, plus 2 to 5% in closing costs on the refinance itself. The whole thing only works if rental income comfortably covers that larger payment. The trick was never the refinance. The trick is finding a property where the numbers actually hold up after all of it, and that part doesn't come with a course attached. Now, let's go up a level. The mechanism behind nearly every headline about a wealthy person paying almost nothing in income tax. It isn't a secretly inserted loophole. It's 3 ordinary rules stacked. Step 1, own. Assets that appreciate. Stock, a business, property. On paper, substantial wealth, but unrealized gains aren't taxed. Tax only triggers on sale. Rule 1, then, is simple. Don't sell. Step 2, borrow. Life still costs money, so instead of selling and triggering a tax bill, borrow against the asset instead. A securities-backed line of credit, pledging a portfolio as collateral. Rates on these tend to run several points below what long-term capital gains tax would cost once a top bracket surtax is included. Run the one number. Assets growing faster than the borrowing costs. The spread stays positive, and no shares ever got sold, meaning no capital gains tax ever got triggered either. Step 3, the cold one, die. Under current law, heirs typically inherit assets at a stepped-up basis. The original gain, the one that was never taxed across an entire lifetime, is simply erased for tax purposes. The loan gets settled from the estate. The untaxed growth stays untaxed permanently. To be direct, this one isn't for most people watching, not today. A lender needs a serious pile of appreciated collateral before extending this kind of line credit. But it matters to see, because a smaller, genuinely usable version of the same idea is coming up. Before that smaller version, a warning, because leverage cuts both directions. When borrowing against investments, a lender doesn't hand over dollar-for-dollar value, typically somewhere between half and most of the portfolio's value, depending on what's held, and they watch it closely. If the market drops and collateral value falls with it, the lender can demand more cash or more collateral immediately, or sell the assets outright to cover the loan. That's a margin call, and it's the mechanism that turns leverage from a tool into a trap. The one number multiplies in both directions. A positive spread compounds into real wealth. A negative one compounds into real disaster, which is exactly why this mechanism deserves respect, not just enthusiasm. Back down to earth, the most immediately usable version in this entire video is the small-scale mirror of the very first example. Instead of a supplier extending terms, a credit card company extends a genuine 0% window. Real balance transfer offers currently running 15 to 21 months at 0%, occasionally longer, usually with a 3 to 5% transfer fee up front as the only real cost. Run the one number. That's renting a chunk of money for roughly 3% total across nearly 2 years. If whatever that money does clears 3% over that stretch, a very low bar, the spread stays positive. The honest, unglamorous version of this isn't a scheme. It's moving a balance off a card charging 24% onto one charging 0%. The spread there isn't small. It's the entire 24% minus the roughly 3% transfer cost. That's close to a guaranteed return most actual investments can't touch. The one number is spread. What money earns minus what it costs. Most people fixate entirely on the earning side. The people who consistently win with debt spend just as much attention on the cost side, because the interest rate charged is negotiable in a way most people never test, and every point shaved off the cost flows straight into the spread. Credit score is the single biggest lever on what money costs. The national average currently sits in the low 700s. The gap between a mediocre score and an excellent one translates into real percentage points on every loan taken for the rest of a lifetime, a mortgage, a car, a business line of credit, and those points compound into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. Wealthy borrowers don't have access to some hidden bank. They have access to cheaper money because they made themselves cheap to lend to. This lever is available to essentially everyone watching, and unlike picking the right investment, it's almost entirely within direct control. So, here's how to actually apply this today. Start with the cost side, because it's the fastest win and it costs nothing. Pull an actual credit report this week and find out what money currently costs. Every point gained lowers the rent on every dollar ever borrowed going forward. Then, look at the most powerful, immediately accessible move, the 0% transfer arbitrage. Carrying a balance at a high rate right now means being on the wrong side of the one number, functioning as the lender's profit center at 20+%. Flip it. Move that balance somewhere the rent drops close to zero and redirect the difference toward actually getting ahead instead of paying rent on money that was never working for anyone but the card issuer. I'm not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice, just one formula worth understanding because it explains more about who ends up ahead with debt and who ends up buried by it than almost anything else in personal finance. If this changed how you think about a loan or a balance you're currently carrying, tell me which of these 6 you're actually going to run. I read every comment.